Welcome to Salvage, a podcast for conversations with artists about the repurposed materials they use in their art practice. Please enjoy my conversation with Aaron Kramer. By exploring the intersection between the found and the fabricated in his sculptural work, Aaron seeks a deeper understanding of the transcendent nature of ordinary objects. His work is often of a woven nature. Street sweeper bristles or reclaimed hardwoods are woven over welded steel armatures, creating a skin. Whether skinning an object or finding new ways to work it, he is excited by the process of reinvention. At the core of this sensibility is the belief that trash is the failure of imagination. Well, thank you, Aaron, for joining me. I really appreciate you taking the time. I was wondering, I know you probably have been to my website. I was wondering if you noted what kind of quote I have at the very top of my website.
Did I see you have trash is a failure of imagination there?
Yes. That's a quote of yours that I had written down, oh my gosh, I don't even know how many years ago.
hmm
Um, Before I even knew who you were. I think when I first saw the quote, I kind of did a quick Google search and I didn't find an Aaron Kramer that would make sense for that quote.
hmm
And then I got distracted and I forgot about it, but I've had it in various forms on my website or in my sketchbooks or in my studio. I just think it's so freaking brilliant and
Well, thank you.
true.
Thank you. It is true. It is very true. I use that motto often.
Yeah,
In either a teaching context or others. It's really it helps people understand a little bit better about the idea that there is no away. When you throw trash away, it's still here on this planet. It doesn't go
exactly.
out into outer space. And so the more we look at trash as a resource and as something that can be reused or reimagined, the better.
Yeah.
So that hopes hopefully that idea of being the failure of imagination reinforces that.
Absolutely, absolutely.
hmm
But let me take you back to your childhood, if you don't mind.
Oh, sure.
Were you an artist as a kid?
I was that kid, often referred to as Aaron, that kid that draws, and I was always falling deep into a world of drawing, and I actually have a sketchbook from when I was about 8 or 9
Oh,
years old
wow.
with these inventions of secret agent outfits and clubhouses and all kinds of things I would build, and Thursday night was my favorite night. That was the night that people put trash out. And so I would ride around the neighborhood, and I kind of learned this from my mother, who would screech to a halt in front of some monumental pile of trash and start pulling things out. And we had a sewing cabinet that was a lovely thing that she found street side. But I would go looking for motors and for electronics and things that I could take apart and building materials. So I was making go karts at the time and forts and yeah, I have a great memory of sitting at the kitchen table while the bustle of the kitchen was going on, and I was deep into a radio that I had found and poking around to see what was what. And of course, I had it plugged in, and there was this sudden arc, and sparks flew everywhere, and everybody stopped what they were doing, looked at me, and I, was in shock that I'd almost electrocuted myself. But yeah, I loved collecting stuff and building stuff. We had a series of workshops, one in the basement first, and then when we built the garage, we had one out in the garage. And my dad was always very generous about giving me access to his tools.
That's awesome.
He was a jeweler, and he
Ah,
had a Fordham flex shaft drill that I used quite a bit, and an old ham radio. So I would tune into the BBC and be able to make stuff and take stuff apart. And even after my parents divorced, I was still using the garage and took apart the lawnmower because I really needed that motor for something else, and then couldn't get it back together again. But Yeah, there's always been a through line, whether it was Legos or building forts or making crystal radios of making things
Right.
um, for myself and my friends always thought I was a little strange, I think, but there are a couple friends whose dads had garages also where they made stuff and
Hmm.
they were doing the traditional Boy Scout stuff with soapbox derbies and other things and
Gotcha.
I was definitely in my five making weird stuff and yeah.
That's awesome. What did you go to school for?
I went to school for graphic design,
Ah.
and my parents had convinced. I wanted to be an illustrator early days,
Hmm.
and my parents convinced me that you needed more of a profession, and so I started in the design program at Northern Illinois University
Hmm.
called Visual Communications, and it was a pretty rigorous. A very rigorous program where after sophomore year they had a portfolio review and they cut half the class.
Oh,
And
wow.
so once you made that cut, then you went on to finish. And so I did everything from exhibition design and corporate identities to publication design and package design
Wow.
and came out with a pretty solid portfolio. Uh,
Hmm.
and then traveled with a friend to Europe on with our bicycles, and I didn't own a car until I was 30, so a bicycle was my
Oh, wow.
main means of getting around. And so we basically traveled around England, and I rode France top to bottom. Came back after that, kind of realizing that I didn't know much about America as much as I did Europe at that point, and kind of vowed to see the United States by bicycle. Started a small
Wow.
job at in Chicago. Um, I had a choice of three jobs that I was offered. One was at the Field Museum of Natural History, designing exhibitions.
Oh,
Uh,
wow.
Another one was at Outside Magazine as an assistant art director. And then the third one was at a small design firm in Chicago that had one of the first Macintosh computers.
Oh,
So
cool.
I grabbed onto that one, and they also uh, were promising that I would be able to run my own jobs and be able to
Mm.
meet with the clients and do all aspects of it from initial meetings to final print production.
Oh, cool.
So I took that job, and we went from an office of three or four people to about 20 people.
Okay.
And I trained everybody how to use the Macintosh computer. And then I was also
Wow.
doing some moonlighting, training people how to use Adobe Illustrator and Photoshop
Hmm.
and a couple other PageMaker and some other applications at the time. And but after working there for about 2 years, I wasn't getting any closer to this goal of riding around the United States, and so I
On your
set a date.
bicycle.
Yeah, and so I set a date, and I decided, okay, I'm going to leave and start my own company,
Oh,
and start my own design firm. Also doing still some training on the side, and doing corporate identity, and doing promotional stuff for real estate, and saved up $10,000, set a date, and gave away my Rolodex. If you remember what those were,
yes,
and
I remember.
gave away all my nice clothes and put everything into a small storage locker. Got on my bicycle and started riding east. Rode
Wow.
as far north as Montreal, as far east as Nova Scotia, as far southwest or southeast as Florida Keys, then to Vegas, and then
Wow.
Seattle, and then all the way back over 13 and a half months on the road,
Oh my God.
11,500 miles as a
Wow.
24-year-old, all by myself. And along the way, I started collecting things. I was like a crow. I'd see something shiny on the road, and I'd investigate and pick it up.
Wait,
And I
wait,
had
wait,
a
wait, wait,
yeah,
wait,
yeah.
wait. But you were traveling by bicycle.
I
So
was, and
where were you
so
keeping all this stuff you were finding?
I had about 70 pounds of pack on the bike. So I had a front pannier, front pack, and then front panniers, rear panniers, and then a sleeping roll.
Wait, this is a
And
bicycle we're talking
this
about,
is a bicycle. This is
not a
as
motorcycle.
no, as they say in England, a push bike. Yes, I had I was
Wow.
bicycling. So I was averaging about 60 miles a day, and would certainly, if I had found the perfect uh, if I found, the perfect diner, I would stop and have a luxurious, couple hours chatting up the waitress, or meeting new people, sitting out in front of a grocery store, eating a can of beans. I would meet people who would invite me to their homes and say, "Hey, need a place to stay? You can camp in my yard." And then they'd offer me keys to their house, and well, we're going to go away for the weekend, lock up and leave keys behind when they come.
Wow.
So I found America, and through it also was finding objects and finding them on the road, finding them in flea markets, and people were giving me objects. And I had a system where things would come into the front pack, and then they would eventually kind of matriculate towards the rear panniers where I had the good stuff.
Okay, so
And
so that was like the evaluation in the front. Like
Yes,
you rode
exactly. If
with it
it
for a while and
rode with a
decided if
while,
it was
could
going to
look at
stay.
it, decide it was going to be good enough to stay, and then at night, I would in campgrounds, or I did a lot of kind of farmers back 40 camping, where no one saw me go in, no one saw me come out, and I would when I had a little piece of time, I would set up my kit, and I would start making postcard size collages of
So,
these found objects.
oh wow. So what was in
And
your kit?
so it was a maker kit that had everything from small tools to materials. So everything was hand. I didn't use any adhesives because I was trying to be conscious of the archival quality of what I was doing, and so things were sewn to a cardboard backboard,
Oh,
and
sewn, like with a needle and
sewn
thread.
with a needle and thread. And I know some people may not be able to view this, but uh, so pieces like this, where
So we
there's
have like
old.
barbed wire, we have a
Mhm,
measuring tape, we had some
mhm.
kind of a metal object
Yeah, yep. So
and
there's
an animal bone.
Yep, there's a jawbone from probably a raccoon. There's a shell. There's an old map, and so I would have some materials that would show up often, like the old charts that I found in New England, and then others that were unique to a place or a time, and each piece told a story. There's over 50 of these objects,
Wow.
and every one is completely different, but they're all the same form factor. There's this kind of 4 by 6
Yeah.
ratio, whether it's horizontal or vertical. And
Uh-huh.
in this particular case, I was in the middle of Texas, and a lot of storms are coming through. And I'd been chased by storms all day, and set up camp in a farmer's back 40, and was hunkered down as the storm was coming in, and it got so bad that I had to move my bike away from my tent because the lightning was so
Oh
bad.
my gosh.
And then I heard what uh, I later found out was a tornado, but it sounded like a freight train coming my way.
Oh my God.
And so in the morning when I woke up, there were trees down everywhere, and I survived this horrible night. But there was a barbed wire fence I had to get over, and there was this piece of barbed wire with a tail that was hanging off of the fence, and I snapped it off, and it became part of the piece.
Wow.
And this piece is called "How the West Was Won," and it's really about how barbed wire kind of defined properties, and then stopped migrations,
Yeah.
and stopped people were suddenly staking a claim to what land was naturally just open to everything. So
Wow. So
yeah.
what did you do with these like did you carry all of these postcard size pieces with you as you
So
traveled?
each one has its own owner's manual that went with it, which dictated the day each object was found.
Uh-huh.
I was a little obsessive, I admit.
Wow.
I document when the object was found, where it was found,
Hmm.
and that related to an overall map. The story behind the object, if there was one, and then the overall story of the piece, dated, a small illustration of it, packaged, and then sent back to my mom, who is collecting all this stuff for me. And she was
Uh-huh.
collecting the film rolls, and then she was getting developed for me because I was shooting 35 millimeter film at the time.
Oh
I was
wow.
shooting Super 8 millimeter movie footage also, as
Wow.
well as the journals and illustrations. And I was making my own postcards, drawing them, and sending them to people. And I recovered all that work at the end. of the trip and mounted an exhibition of the work,
Wow.
complete with a setup of the tent and the bike and giant proof sheets of the photographs and some rolls of the Super 8 millimeter playing on repeat.
Wow. So when you
So
set out on your journey in the beginning, did you already have an idea that you were going to be recording it like this, that you were going to be making all these
I
things?
had a nascent idea. You know, as a graphic designer, I had a visual story that I thought I could tell.
Hmm.
And some of the earliest pieces, the big idea was I would make something and then literally send it through the post and see what happened.
Hmm.
And so the early ones that I did retrieve back from people I sent them to were beat up in the mail and had really kind of suffered because you know they weren't protected at all. I was
Yeah.
just seeing how far I could go with it, and so I then did. I started building up once I kind of got 10 or 15 in. I was really like, okay, I think I've got something here. It's a visual diary.
Mhm.
It's a way to tell the story, and also having been introduced to a lot of new media at the time, which would be interactive CD-ROMs. I had this idea that I wanted to create a digital book.
Ah,
This is 1988,
okay.
mind you, 1988, 89. But I had this idea of a digital book that you would the collages would become a chapter opener. You would click on an object and it would take you to a story, and it could be
Ah,
a story about the object itself, a story about the person who gave me the object, or a photograph, or some other link that then would kind of lead you on this wandering journey through the material. And you could
cool.
then zoom back out, come to a map, and choose a place on the map where there were these little icons, and then
Hmm.
zoom back in
So
and
did you
dip in
ever
and out.
create that?
It's still in progress 35 years later. I'm
I'm kind of
hoping
relieved to hear that, to be honest.
it's a yoke. I imagine my kids are going to have to do it for me at some point, but I'm trying. I really am. I have had several people interested in funding it. I've had people, who are pushing for it and waiting for it to happen.
Hmm.
I've even talked with publishers about it, but it's such a. I need an editor. I need a strong editor
Hmm.
because there's so much content.
Yeah, yeah.
There's so many stories of the adventure, and it was my graduate school. It was my way of
Hmm.
seeing America, finding out what America was about during 1980, 89. It was my way of uh, kind of reinforcing the humanity that still exists in this country.
Hmm.
So came back from that trip as an artist and identified as strongly as, okay, I'm an artist now.
Yeah.
And then started of course, necessity meant that I had to still do a little bit of design work and a little bit of training. I took a job training an entire staff of package designers on
Hmm.
how to use Macintosh computers. And during that time, I was also making what I would call tabletop scale objects from recycled materials. It was
What
then that
kind
I
of
just
recycled materials?
so I'm glad you asked. So it was at that time I was walking the streets of Chicago and I looked down and found this little piece of metal.
Mm.
And it couldn't figure out what it was, and there was another one. They were all at the curb, and finally realized that they were the bristles from the street sweepers that had
Oh,
broken off, and
huh.
they had ended up in the gutter, snapped off, but they were really a very tensile steel. They sprung back, and so I started messing around with those, and eventually decided I was going to start weaving an orb, and the orb turned into a basket because I couldn't finish it,
Yeah.
couldn't complete the sphere, and then I started collecting more, and a couple pieces I was making had nests in them made from that material.
Oh, cool.
But I had developed a kind of a small grouping of sculptures that ended up in a window at Tiffany's,
Oh, wow.
and my brother did display work, And so he asked if he could borrow some to put them in the windows of these
Uh-huh.
little vitrine windows and draping very high end jewelry over these kind of rustic objects.
Yeah.
And a guy who was walking by on Michigan Avenue saw them, and he worked for a company that made display items for department stores. He saw something in the work and asked me if I could develop a line of objects
Oh,
to
wow.
sell them for distribution to stores.
Uh-huh.
So I took it on as a challenge. I have this small representation here of one of them,
Oh,
and
cool.
this
The
is
big
what we're looking
sphere.
at is an 8-inch diameter woven sphere. Inside of it is a stamp ball. It's a wooden ball covered in vintage
Oh,
trading
cool.
stamps,
Well,
like S&H stamps.
what's the sphere made from?
These are recycled street sweeper bristles.
That's what they look like.
That's what
See,
they
if
look
you
like.
told
Yeah.
me it was wood, I would believe you.
Right, right. And so I'm not a trained weaver. I'm a intuitive random weaver. But I feel like there's weaving is in our DNA.
Yeah.
I think there's such a long history of patinating and over under
Yeah, yeah.
that it's just endemic to who we are genetically. I started weaving spheres. Some were woven like this, others were constructed in a very specific pattern that I invented back then. And it looks very geometric at times. And then I had a series of stands. Some were bed springs, vintage bed springs
Oh.
that were supporting the objects.
Hmm.
And so in this window, they were more sculptural for the product line. They were much more systematized. I had a 3-inch diameter one, a 5-inch diameter one, a 8-inch, a six
Right.
inch diameter one, and an 8-inch diameter
Right.
one.
And did you
And
make them too, or did you have somebody else make
so
them?
I made them, and then
Wow.
the orders started coming in, and I started panicking a little bit because I was having a hard time, keeping up with production.
Uh-huh.
And then parallel to that, I applied to I had some work in a small store. The owner of the store suggested I apply to the American Craft Council show,
Yeah.
and it was a wholesale show.
Hmm.
And so the idea being that I would show up with a line of objects, and I already had the beginning of it,
Yeah.
and then I would sell these objects to stores, galleries, and the like, in order to start a production line. So
Mhm.
I designed this line of objects that included some jewelry made from found objects,
Oh,
and
cool.
it was literally like scraps of. I would take a tail light that I would find in an intersection where there was an accident, and I would carve the tail light into a heart, and
Oh,
then I would
wow.
bezel it with old screen and have chains that were made from old cuckoo clock chains or old rosaries, and it was very eclectic and very rough. But definitely an aesthetic, a found aesthetic to it.
Hmm.
And then also I was making some furniture and some display cases,
Hmm.
and then also the spheres. And at my first show in 1990, I believe it was 91,
Hmm.
I noticed there was a line forming in front of my booth
Oh
before
my
it
God.
opened. And as soon as it opened, my wife and I were writing orders as fast as we could.
Oh,
I
wow.
filled my year. I think the show was in February. I
Uh-huh.
filled my year, then I backfilled my year, and then I filled into the next year.
Oh my
Uh,
gosh. Wow.
so had in 1991 dollars, I had $70,000 in orders that I was committed to making.
Yeah.
So I slowed down on the graphic design work that I'd been doing and started production, and eventually started falling behind.
Mm.
Realized I needed help. I needed manufacturing help. Hired a series of people. Hired a neighbor who I taught how to make stuff, and a couple other people, and mustered through and kind of had the initial problems of quality wasn't quite what it should have been,
Hmm.
and then got that under control, and resources were suddenly scarce. Like I was having a hard time finding street sweeper bristles. I cleaned the streets and found all the scrap, and so I needed to I needed to go out and find where they came from. And so
Uh-huh.
I ended up hooking up with a guy who I knew a woman whose husband worked at Streets and Sanitation in Chicago. Met him in a back alley. He opened his trunk. He had like 10 broken bristles that he had pulled out of the trash. I gave him a case of beer and transaction complete. And I went back to making stuff. And eventually, as I moved to California after that, and started a studio there, kept some people working in Valparaiso, Indiana, found
Oh,
new
wow.
resources for street sweeper bristles in California, better quality ones, not as rusty because it's California,
Yeah.
and trash is very localized too. You
Oh,
find that
absolutely.
wherever you go, I like to be a garbologist and really check what is predominant in an area. And
Hmm.
so the work shifted a little bit when I moved to California, and in 93 or 4, 94, and then also started hiring some people to help me make the jewelry. The jewelry was really predominantly the stuff I was selling. It was
Oh.
probably 60% of it was the jewelry that I was making, and I was hand carving industrial resins and bezeling things in brass and holding things together with everything was very mechanically connected.
Hmm.
So there were screws or gimp tacks, which are these little vintage round-headed tacks that I was finding.
Oh.
And I would also make a pilgrimage to Rhode Island every year to a place called Wolfie Myro that's actually still around, and they buy up wholesale uh, jewelry from companies that go out of business, and it's
Oh.
a massive. It's an old soap factory from the 1890s, and
Uh-huh.
it's just cavernous. And there's one room that's all just chains, and they're unplated chains, and another room that's just weird findings. And so I would go there and find objects that would make their way into the jewelry,
Hmm.
and created continued this line. I did that for about 10 years,
Oh, wow.
the wholesale shows,
Uh-huh.
uh, and um, and then kind of the bottom fell out after 9/11.
Yeah. A lot of
And
bottoms fell out
a
after nine
lot of
eleven.
bottom fell, and a lot of people, a lot of small galleries just disappeared. They
Hmm.
had big orders and they suddenly canceled them, and
Mm.
even department stores were cutting back on the amount of work they were buying. So I shifted and started applying to the most high end contemporary craft shows I could find,
Hmm.
street shows, indoor shows, things like the Philadelphia Museum Show or the
Yeah.
Smithsonian Craft Show.
Hmm.
I was also in shows like the Denver, the Cherry Creek's Fine Arts Festival, or Scottsdale Fine Arts Festival, or Beverly Hills,
So that's
Coconut
a
Grove.
crazy life on the road, though.
It
That's
is. It
really a lot
is.
of work
It's a
that
lot of
keeps
work,
you
but
away
it
from your studio.
kept me away from my family, my
Yeah.
studio. I had several employees at that point too, and it was a lot of what was driving the whole thing was my need to pay my employees,
Hmm.
and keep this whole thing going and expanding, and um, and so I would, but really, there's nothing more exhilarating as an artist, as a working artist, than to make an object, think it's the best thing in the world. Literally, the welds are still hot. It's just freshly sprayed with lacquer. You place it in the vehicle, you unload, you set up, and it's the first thing that sells because
Yeah.
it's clearly identified by the public as the best thing in the world. And so, and then the immediate gratification of getting cash in your pocket,
Yeah. It's
which
a
really
rush.
is a rush. It's an
Yeah.
absolute rush. So I, as much as it was set up, breakdown, fight, fight, fight.
Hmm.
I enjoyed the rush of it, the good juju you got out of it, and you go back home just jazzed to make more stuff.
Yeah.
Now, the other side of it is the weather. When I was doing outdoor shows, the weather was always a problem, whether it was in Chicago, Milwaukee, or Denver, or even Florida. There was always some weather component
Yeah.
that would be ominously hovering out there. You had an eye on the sky. With one eye, I had it on the sky, and the other on your booth.
Yeah.
And I had been through several calamitous storms where people's tents were flying away and
Yeah.
their
Yeah.
merchandise was strewn everywhere. ankle deep or shin deep in water,
Oh,
and my stuff is falling over and floating away.
oh my
Literally cash box floating down the center of the street.
gosh.
And I still have a little PTSD about that, as you can probably
Yeah,
tell.
I
Yeah,
would too.
yeah, and yeah, it all comes rushing back suddenly. And so after about 10 years of that, I started scaling that back and trying to focus more on galleries
Hmm.
and private shows and commissions.
Hmm.
And the benefit of doing all those 20 years of wholesale and then retail was that I was getting a large amount of designers had found me and
Ah,
architects, and
hmm.
so I was doing custom work for those people, which was great. And I
Yeah,
was doing lighting, I was doing wall installations, I was doing one of a kind things that really
hmm.
kind of challenged me as a maker.
That
And
sounds really fun.
it is fun. It is
Yeah.
fun, and I think if you continue to make the same thing, for me personally, if you continue to make the same widget over and over again, you're going to burn out, and
Yeah.
it's no longer fun, and it makes it far more of a job.
Yeah.
So I
Yeah.
was constantly reinventing myself, whether I was introducing new materials or applying the line between the found and the fabricated.
Hmm.
I like for somebody to look at an object and first not really know what they're looking at.
Yeah.
The aesthetic of it is amazing, and the silhouette, as I say,
Hmm.
and then as they get closer, they see the craft that's involved in it, and then a tertiary effect is that they notice what it's made out of,
Yeah.
and when it's made out of a recycled material, then it becomes a bonus,
Yeah.
and it becomes an aha, oh my gosh moment.
Yeah.
Whereas if you flip it all around and I say, here's an object I made out of recycled coffee stirrers, your first thought is, so those are coffee stirrers that people licked and threw in a trash, and then you made something and you're handing this to me now. And so, but you
Yeah.
flip it around and it becomes value added, whereas trash is a very difficult thing to work with as a consistent medium
Yeah.
because of the connotations. And that's, getting back to the trash is a failure of imagination. That's why I would try to reinforce that concept, but still getting over the hurdle as a selling artist, that what you're looking at is a beautiful object, well made, and it's made out of trash,
Right.
is the order of things, at least as
Yeah.
far as my career.
Yeah. So
Um,
beautiful object first,
yes,
and
beautiful
artwork
object first,
first, and
and
then,
the craft of how it's made.
yeah.
And I think and that's one of the huge benefits of having that kind of contemporary craft background,
Hmm.
and also being a designer, that that the aesthetics really matter, and the way it's put together really matters.
Yeah.
I try to stay away from adhesives, because
Hmm.
adhesives fail. Don't I use hot glue sparingly if I do at all.
Hmm.
And so this idea of mechanical connections makes something more robust, and also you see the connection, you
Hmm.
see how it's been put together.
So what is your favorite technique for attaching things together?
Mm. Um, I've done workshops on that I call this to that, and so in those, you take a piece of rubber and a vinyl record, and you want to put them together. How do you do that?
Yeah.
One of the best ways to do that would be with using a pop rivet. And so pop rivet is it's a tubular rivet, and it works by, it's got a mandrel that goes through the tube and has a
Hmm.
little bead on the end of it. And as you squeeze the handle, it draws that mandrel through with the bead, and it expands this tube so that it creates pressure on both sides of the object that you're
Huh.
trying to bind together. And so using some washers also to displace some of that force. I'm able to put together tin can lids, punch holes in them, put the rivet through it,
Hmm.
and put a washer on the backside and crank it together. And it shows the finish is quite nice because it's just this little round object that is the fastener.
Uh-huh.
And so I like pop riveting. I love welding.
Ah.
I have the first welder I bought was a spot welder, with the intent of being able to weld tin can lids together. And then when I bought a MIG welder, it was the best hot glue gun ever because you can stick two pieces of metal together really efficiently.
Wow.
So and then just interesting fasteners. Like I often would go into old hardware stores and ask to see their back stock, and they always had a room or a shelf that was like the hardware that didn't sell.
Oh,
And
interesting.
oftentimes on those shelves, you would find old screws, and before they did galvanizing, they did bluing. And bluing is this it's a way to preserve a steel with a coating that will make it not rust for a long time.
Uh-huh.
And so I'd look for number two blued steel slot head screws, and those screws then would find their way to the jewelry that I was putting together,
Oh,
or
wow.
would hold down something on the surface of a
Hmm.
piece of wood. So yeah, I think those are some of my favorite fasteners.
Okay, cool.
Yeah.
None of them have I ever had any experience with, so that's
Ah,
I love hearing that. It's
yeah. There's
fascinating.
so many out there, and there's so many interesting ways that people uh, solve the idea of connecting two disparate materials together 100 years ago,
Yeah, yeah,
that still exists. So yeah.
yeah. No, that's fascinating. My main way of keeping things attached to each other is by sewing.
Hmm.
So, but then I'm using mostly softer materials that I can push
Right.
a needle through. So
Yeah.
it's fascinating to me. This episode was brought to you by the Repurposer Collective. Our doors are currently open. So if you are inspired by this podcast and you are offended by the trash littering the roads or the woods or the ocean, and you create art from materials that others might consider trash, the Repurposer Collective is the place for you. The doors are open. We would love you to join us. And now, back to the podcast.
So I was in a show just recently, or a couple years ago now, actually, that is called Diverted Destruction.
Mm,
And
good
each
title.
year there's a theme. So this gallery, Liz's Loft in LA.
Hmm.
And she has a show probably in its 20th year now.
Oh, wow.
And each year there's a different medium suggested. So there was a plastic edition,
Hmm.
and for that I was using everything from recycled laundry bottles to chip containers, and cutting them up and reimagining them, but using the rivets
Mm,
to hold them together. And it's
yeah.
a really nice aesthetic when you can kind of see the connection of
Hmm.
how it's put together, rather than gluing it or welding it. But
Yeah.
yeah,
So that kind of, when you mentioned jugs, that made me think I saw on your website that you make projects with kids too. And
I
you had a
do.
project where the kids made masks out of milk jugs.
Yeah,
That was
yeah.
brilliant. I was like, oh my
Oh,
God, why
thank
didn't
you.
I think of that?
Right? I mean, if you turn it upside down, you got the handle on it that looks like a nose,
Yeah.
and then you open up the spout. You kind of cut most of the way around it and tilt it down, and suddenly that becomes a mouth.
Yeah.
And then make eye holes, and then you really just have to figure out how to get a kid's head inside of by cutting out the backside of it. And you always have to wash your milk jugs with
Yes.
hot water and soap, and multiple times, because really there's nothing stinkier than putting your head inside of an old milk jug. Yeah. Yeah, I've been working with kids for since my kids were young.
Uh-huh.
When they were in preschool, I showed up at preschool one day with the tool belt on, and started literally teaching kids how to use power tools in a
Oh, that's
preschool setting.
awesome. Wow.
And I was like the Pied Piper every time I would come in. They were like, "What are we doing today? This is
Yeah.
great." So eventually, the school decided to give me a room. They
Ah.
gave me an atelier, and they said, "Whatever you want to do." But the theme this year is France, and
Mhm.
so I started making Eiffel Towers with the kids out of sticks, and then when we got finished with that, we started making a prototype for a larger one, and then eventually built a 20-foot tall Eiffel Tower out of cardboard
Wow.
in the middle of the playground with these kids, and we set it up like a construction zone. They had to have the hat on when they came into the space, and it was charming. It was
Yeah.
just absolutely charming.
Oh, that sounds
But
awesome.
my kids have grown up in my shop, and I've grown up kind of teaching their friends how to make stuff.
Hmm.
And then in 19, like around the financial crisis in 2008, 2009, I walked into a place here in Los Angeles called the Rediscover Center. And the Rediscover Center is a materials resource for artists and for educators.
Oh, cool.
And it started and so it was a warehouse, imagine a back warehouse filled with bins of similar objects. So
Hmm.
things like bottle cap lids and
Hmm.
corks and buttons and weird fasteners and weird things from the textile industry in Los
Hmm.
Angeles. And so educators would come in and shop it and bring it to their class, and they did some programming around sustainability. But I walked in and thought, well, this looks like my studio for one, but also it's a place where I can kind of extend what I had been doing with my kids. So I
Hmm.
volunteered for a couple weekends making stuff with kids, and I brought my suite of tools with me, and eventually I convinced them to start a summer camp.
Oh, wow.
And I'd seen a summer camp. There's a guy named Gaver Tully who started a tinkering camp in the San Francisco area. And
Mm.
his big idea was putting tools in the hands of kids and building epic stuff. So roller coasters made out of scrap wood,
Yeah.
or giant fort, 2, 3 level structures that kids could climb on and had built
Hmm.
themselves. And so taking the general idea of that, I constructed this summer camp for kids in
Hmm.
2011, and we had my kids in it as well as about 20 kids.
Uh-huh.
And now we run 3 camps a year. I'm sorry, we run camps over every break. So spring
Wow.
break, summer break, winter break, holidays, we're doing camps, but we serve over 600 kids per summer at
Wow. That's amazing.
3 to 4 different locations. And so I joined the board after I got back from living in London for 3 years in 2015, and I've been instrumental in creating kind of a cash based nonprofit. So
Oh.
meaning that we're not always profit driven, but the idea that we were creating programming that we could charge for,
Hmm.
so that we could then give away more.
Yeah.
And so the summer camps exploded, and that became a huge line item in our budget. But we were able to employ a lot of artists to
Hmm.
help facilitate the process, and we also expanded our footprint. So now we have two primary locations.
Oh,
One in
wow.
mid city in Los Angeles, and in Korea near Koreatown, and the other on the west side in Venice.
Uh-huh.
And through those two, we were expanding our footprint even more with everything from weekend things like birthday parties and
Hmm.
open crafting, to during the week we're in schools and after schools.
Oh,
So
wow.
we have over 71 school contracts,
Oh my
where
gosh. That's huge.
and a lot of them are with LAUSD, where
Hmm.
we go into schools and we either establish a makerspace or add on to their existing makerspace.
Uh-huh.
We become the maker educator with an emphasis on sustainability,
That's
and then
amazing.
we also are able to um, we're also able to then fund a lot of the other things. So we give away 20% of all of our camps and
Hmm.
programming to underserved kids in Los Angeles.
That's
So
amazing. Wow. This
yeah.
sounds huge. What's the name of this art center again?
It's rediscovercenter.org
Wow.
is the web address.
Yeah.
And the guy who I started the first summer camp with, Jonathan Bajour, has become our executive director. And we now have a board of, I think, about 12 people. always looking for more interested folks. I think our annual budget this year was 1.6 million.
Wow, that's
And
amazing.
that's built up from 60,000, I think, when I first started with them.
Wow.
So
Wow,
yeah,
what an inspiration.
it's a great organization, and my role is somebody on the board. I was board president for 4 years through the pandemic,
Mhm.
and but my role is also as kind of an instigator and a fire starter. So I'm out there creating new ideas. Like I started this thing called Cardboard City, where we took a 10,000 square foot empty space on the Third Street Promenade. It used to be an Adidas store. It had been sitting vacant for 4 years.
Uh-huh.
We took that space and were able to get the owners of the space to give it to us for $1. But we got it back to code. We turned it into part gallery of cardboard art.
Hmm.
So half of it was this amazing presentation of Los Angeles-based cardboard artists, and
Oh, wow.
the other half was a maker space where families could come and sit down and make stuff out of cardboard.
Hmm.
And then in the back, we had an artist in residency where every week it was a different artist who was making stuff that kids could join in on,
Oh,
and then
my.
it became this giant build. And we've done it 3 years in a row. We took a 1 year hiatus, and we're working on, or 2 year hiatus now, and we're working on another location with a Westfield Mall
Hmm.
to get a much more permanent location for it. But
Wow, that
it's an
sounds
idea that,
incredible.
yeah, it's a great community building event, and
Yeah.
it exposes people in a very subtle way to the idea of using trash, and using something that everybody, post pandemic, you can go anywhere and find a piece of used cardboard that is
Yep.
perfectly good, and we give you the tools and techniques to manipulate it, and then the kids add the imagination, and so we have kids building cosplay outfits. They're building small automata, mechanical things. They're
Uh-huh.
building all kinds of crazy contraptions that
Wow.
are 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 just a great reuse for the material.
That's
So yeah,
amazing. Wow. Well, I had no idea. That's really cool. I'm so glad you
yeah.
told me about that.
No,
Wow.
it's one of those side projects of
Yeah.
mine that I do, and then I've
Sounds
also
like a passion project, not
it
just a
is a
side project.
very much so, very much so. And my wife has often been mad at me for the amount of time I spend with the organization, and giving them all this time for free. But the reality is that it's paying back in dividends. So
Yeah, yeah.
we're the largest kids makerspace in Los Angeles.
Hmm.
We just acquired an organization called Woodwork that is doing fantastic work, training woodworking
Mm.
to at-risk youth,
Hmm.
and but they ran into some financial problems, and so we've kind of taken over their workshop,
Hmm.
or their list, and we're trying to integrate their programming into our programming, and so
Wow.
there's still a lot to do,
Hmm.
and maker education is a key to so many successful childhoods and adulthoods,
Yep.
where you become self-sufficient. You're able to you look at something as not a problem, but as an opportunity to fix something,
Yeah. As a
where
challenge, a fun
yeah,
challenge. Yeah.
yeah. So kind of on the three legs of sustainability, education,
Hmm.
and creativity.
Amazing.
And
Wow.
so teaching creativity is a very subtle thing, but when you introduce recycled materials and the tools to manipulate it,
Hmm.
creativity comes much more easily, I think.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah,
Wow.
yeah, yeah,
Well, so while all of that, which I can see how that could take up so much of your time,
yeah.
what are you currently working on in your studio?
So in my studio these days, I have a couple projects. For the last 10 years, I've been doing a series of awards for a company. Each year, I do something different, and and I do them in quantity. So
Hmm.
last year, I
And
think I
from
made
repurposed materials again.
a lot of repurposed materials. Now, some of the repurposed materials are as subtle as they've produced a journal since the late 1800s. And
Wow.
so I'll take vintage journals
Hmm.
and using kind of a decoupage technique,
Hmm.
apply that on the surface of the base of the award or inside the award or in
Ah,
some
okay.
context. Um, and, uh, and I'm not a purist. I mean, maybe just frame that. I'm not a pure. Everything doesn't have to be recycled.
Hmm.
I learned long ago that it would just drive myself crazy if I had to get that specific.
Hmm.
And so I blur the line, as I said before, between the found and the fabricated.
Yeah.
And so you look at things that I've made, and they have an aesthetic
Hmm.
that looks like it was reused, remade, reimagined,
Hmm.
but it actually is fabricated from newer materials.
Hmm.
And then on the other side of it, I have things that are very much found, and
Yeah.
they scream found, but they have another story to tell. It's
Hmm.
the secret life of objects, if you will. And so the pieces I've been making for them, um, sometimes there'll be scrap wood that I've pulled out of a dumpster that at a hardwood distributor, and
Hmm.
I've resawn and reimagined into a Mobius strip.
Hmm.
And or in the context of this work, like I'm working on a piece right now. I've got this idea that I'm going to be making a mechanical, and we're still in the prototyping phase of this, but I'm going to be making a mechanical puppet, basically, that is a scientist. And here's his head. I don't know if I can see
It's an
that well.
egghead. How
It's like
funny.
an egg. He's an egg-headed scientist, and I made the little glasses, and you can see his glasses are held on by little number 2 wooden screws with slots. And he'll have in one hand he'll have a test tube that he'll be looking at, and then he'll flip over and look at his journal where he's writing with his other hand, and he'll be looking back and forth, and his arms will be alternating up and
That's
down.
awesome.
The prototype is made with scrap wood, uh, baling wire for the eyeglasses, brass rod, and then like last year, I used instead of making a box, I used these boxes that were from honey collection boxes.
Mm.
And so from the beekeeping industry, they have these little wooden boxes
Huh.
that go into these large trays that then go into the hive, and then the bees make their wax, their honeycombs inside of
Uh-huh.
them. I found the source for these boxes they're unconstructed. They're a flat piece of wood that's been finger jointed and
Hmm.
has precision cuts in it to be able to fold it into a box.
Hmm.
And so is it found because I found this manufacturer who once a year they actually make these boxes on the East Coast, and they're a quickly diminishing resource,
Hmm.
or is it fabricated because I put it together?
Right.
So I'm blurring the line
Yeah.
there.
Yeah.
So this year it could be this little scientist. It also could be uh, a large test tube with a pile of little miniature books inside, all
Mm.
covered with the vintage journals, and a little figure sitting there reading a book in a scientist's smock.
Right.
Uh, or it could be what was the third idea? Oh, there was or a magic trick,
Ah.
and I like magic, and I've been poking at trying to make magic tricks, and it would be a box that you turn a handle, and the first scene is nothing, and then the next is a test tube, and then the next one is the journal, and then the next one is nothing, and
Yeah.
so it would repeat.
That's
So we'll
cool.
see what it is, and I like
Okay.
making. So I mean, that's a perfect entree into the idea of making mechanical objects,
Yeah. Yeah. You
and
do a lot of those.
I do a lot of those, and I've always done them. Uh, I've done them since the 90s,
Mm.
or even a little bit before that, uh, and they were either implied mechanical uh, or were outright mechanical. Turn a handle or plug it in and press a
Hmm.
button. And that goes back to my early days as a kid working with Legos and imagining giant machines and
Yeah.
things. And so I've been making these objects as a as kind of a side venture.
Hmm.
When I would be invited to do a show uh, uh, for a gallery, I would explicitly make work that was mechanical,
Gotcha.
knowing that there's a chance that it won't sell,
Hmm.
but kind of increasing my exposure in that as well as getting my chops up
Right.
from
And it's something
an
that you
engineering
really
standpoint,
enjoyed.
and it's something I really
Yeah.
enjoy.
So can
And
I ask you
so,
about your
yeah,
prototypes? So
sure,
I noticed that you also you do a lot of sketches first before you
I
even go
do.
to a prototype, right?
Yeah, yeah. In fact, here's I'll give you a quick peek into my sketchbook here.
Oh, cool. I
It's
was going to ask, do you keep a
Yeah,
studio sketchbook and
so
like,
I do. Like this is
uh-huh.
a typical page for the prototyping
Yeah,
of
lots of
this
really simple black and white sketches.
simple black and white sketches, dimensional sketches.
Hmm.
Uh, I like to kind of think as I'm drawing
Yeah,
and
notes and
uh,
sketches.
notes and
Interesting.
sketches, and then I sometimes I'll get into the kind of the technical side of note keeping where
Uh-huh.
I've got some measurements and I've got some almost schematics going.
And hey,
Uh,
my name is on there.
and your name is on there because I have a podcast on December 29th. Yeah.
That's
Uh,
funny. So, do
yeah.
you keep a sketchbook for every project that you're working on, or is there like a more general sketchbook that just keeps going?
This the general sketchbooks I've had I have now a history of sketchbooks that go back uh 35 years, I'd say.
Mm, wow.
And they are the place where I'll write a quick note,
Hmm.
grocery list, or a
So
note before I'm
everything.
going in. Everything becomes it's kind of my wife actually does a similar thing. She's in finance, but she has what she calls the one book. And the
Ah,
one book is this, and she's got a history of them also from 30 some odd years.
hmm.
And so the idea being that it's a place where I can jot a quick note, an invention comes to mind, a thing comes to mind,
Hmm.
I'll place it there. And sometimes I don't go back to see what it was, but I find I repeat it,
Mm,
and the process of notating, documenting is a way to kind of reinforce an idea in the
hmm.
mind that then that then it comes up. It's like bubbles up
Yeah,
from wherever,
yeah,
and then eventually you kind of get around to making it.
right. Do you
So
ever
so
go back like a decade into your sketchbooks?
I do. Like I have this show coming up that is about all the mechanical work. It's called Sense of Wonder, and I went back in sketchbooks to look at these drawing machines and the
Hmm.
date that I kind of conceived of the idea that
Ah,
oh, here's how I thought I would go about it, and then the variations on it, and I was
hmm.
prototyping them and making these machines that when you turn a handle, they draw a portrait of me over and over again.
Oh, cool.
It's a selfie. It's called the selfie machine,
That's funny.
and so I did recently go back to look at some of those because we're
Hmm.
going to blow those pages up and have them as kind of graphics on the wall for this
Oh,
exhibition of the
that's
work.
great. So
So yeah.
you start with a bunch of sketches and then you decide whether that one sketch is now going to be a prototype.
Well, for this
Yeah.
particular client, that's kind of that's required.
Uh-huh.
They want to see a range of. I'll even do a Pinterest board too. So,
Oh,
and
wow.
I would do that when I was teaching high school too. I would have the kids create a Pinterest board
Uh-huh.
of kind of an ideas board, and then I would have them start to sketch those things, translate that to a sketch in
Hmm.
order to start working. In this particular context with this client, I also produce a video each year that is the making of.
Oh,
And so
wow.
it always I start the videos out with it starts with a sketch. And
Yeah.
so you see me actually sketching
Uh-huh.
close up, and then the process of
Oh,
prototyping,
wow. So you
and then
really
making it.
record your process from the very
Yes,
start.
I
Wow.
try to document it. Now that's that particular context.
Uh-huh.
In other contexts, when I'm creating a piece of art from a found object, say I was at a flea market, and I found a thing.
Hmm.
First off, when I find a thing and I want to purchase it, I have to have an idea ish of what I'm
Okay.
going to do with it. But then once it's in the studio, I'll start manipulating the object or working with the raw material,
Mm-hmm.
and it sometimes tells me where it wants to go.
Mm-hmm.
And so if it's a pliable material that's bendy and is weavable, it maybe wants to be woven or held in tension in some way.
Mm-hmm.
If it's a if it's a great object and I have 100 of them, then it's about quantity.
Yeah.
It's about presentation of a lot of things,
Right.
and so my favorite way to work is in that kind of curiosity driven investigation
Mm-hmm.
of the object, and that doesn't require sketching
Okay.
necessarily.
Okay.
So I, oftentimes I will sketch something after the fact,
Mm-hmm.
and probably to confuse the art historian who's going to look at my sketchbooks 100 years from now, like, wow, he had that fully formed. It's like, no, I made the thing and then I sketched it out. But but that's the fun part of ideating with, and there's the only constraints are the materials limitations,
Yeah.
and so there's and it's a and I teach this to kids all the time, that that creative process, that initial ideation stage, is a very fragile
Mm-hmm.
stage. There, it's like a bubble. It's perfectly formed maybe, but it's very fragile, and
Yeah.
so the littlest thing you pop it and the idea is gone.
Right.
And so when I'm working with kids and we're looking at prototypes that everybody has made, I really want them to have the gentle gloves on and use words that are reinforcing rather than that's never going to work.
Yeah.
I was told that too many times by other people as a kid,
Uh-huh.
and it's really kind of a pet peeve of mine when I see creativity quashed in a young person's
Mm.
mind, and I want them to think that everything is possible,
Yeah.
and for as long as possible, till it becomes a little more hardened and resistant to criticism. So,
Okay.
yeah.
But
So,
so I think that's amazing. But even though you have many successful iterations of your work, I bet you have some failures as well, things that
oh,
just did
absolutely,
not work out.
absolutely, and my studio is filled with them,
Ah,
and
that was my
and
next question. Do you keep
and I think
them?
it's oh I do, and I have like every year the of this trophy project, I have bins of all the failures and 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 the almosts, and I think it's really important to surround yourself with those because they're departure points, and you've kind of already gotten it that far, and
Hmm.
so now where's it going to go next? But I think failure is such a huge component in the making process,
Yeah.
and I think there's a certain, especially with kids today, there's a certain seeking of perfectness
Hmm.
that is regrettable, because you set a kid up for failure when if it's not perfect, then they abandon it.
Yeah.
And so working through that lack of perfection and that roughness and that the it's not quite working is really important as a young maker. And when I work, I also teach robotics. I'm on a
Oh.
robotics team, a high school robotics team,
Hmm.
and I'm a mentor, a paid mentor for the team.
Hmm.
And one of the things I'd like to work with the kids about is like this process of creating is and not having the perfect thing. And so what rhymes with what you want, and looking for that thing that it fits the some of the criteria, but not
Hmm.
all of it. But how can I adapt that thing that's not perfect to what I need? And
Right.
eventually, a lot of ideas come out of that process.
Yeah.
And so, guiding kids through not just ordering it on Amazon or not going right to CAD,
Hmm.
because we're big on computer aided design. But in computer aided design, there's not a lot of space for folly and
Yeah.
for running down a rabbit hole until you print it out and then see, oh, it doesn't work, and
Yeah.
I've got to modify that. Whereas if you're working with real materials and real tools, you're able to very quickly determine where's the friction,
Yeah.
And you can use that as a life metaphor too. You can find the friction and relieve the friction, then you're going to open yourself up to a much
Yeah.
more
Yeah.
copacetic
And
object.
I think there's a certain satisfaction that comes with working with physical materials that you don't get from doing computer aided design. And I
It's
have
true.
nothing against computers. I love
Yeah, yeah,
Photoshop
yeah.
and all of that. But
Right.
to make something with your hands and actually to see it physically come about is a whole different experience.
Yeah, and it's amazing how much uh, when you're working with your hands, there's a back and forth play in the brain where those moments where the hands take over and you just don't
Yeah.
realize your hands have been working for the last half an hour,
Yeah.
or vice versa. Yeah, so
Yeah.
you get this back and forth of that time to your hands are busy and then the new ideas come. It's kind of like when you're in the shower and suddenly the big
Yeah.
idea comes to you, or you're just
Hmm.
drifting off to sleep and that big idea comes to you.
Yeah.
It gives you that moment where you're in the process of making, and then you can very quickly shift to, okay, I need to do this now,
Yeah.
and I need to change that, and how can I find the friction
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
solve it? Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely, agreed.
Yeah. Well, I think that's a perfect place to stop. That was just, yeah, that's exactly what I would want to inspire people with, to inspire them
Great.
to actually make with their hands.
Absolutely,
Yeah.
absolutely. We are born makers, and the more digital it comes in, hopefully, and the more AI comes in, hopefully will continue that process because someone's got to fix the robots at the end of the day.
Yes, absolutely. Wow. Well,
Yeah.
thank you so much, Aaron. This has been
Thank
an
you, Natalie.
insightful
Natalia,
conversation,
sorry. Yes.
and I know we could keep talking for
I
hours.
think we could. I
Yeah.
do think we could.
Yeah.
So we'll
So
do
we may
we'll
have
do
to come
part
back to this.
we'll do part two later on.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly.
Okay, great. Thank
All
you so
right.
much. I appreciate
Thank
your time.
you. Wow. What an inspiring conversation. Thank you so much, Aaron, for talking with me and oh my God, inspiring me. I want to go to that place and in with the kids and play with cardboard. That sounds amazing. I can't wait to dive down that rabbit hole. I hope you enjoyed our conversation as well. Please rate, review, please share, 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 share. And if you know of someone who would love to sponsor this podcast, I would love to know about them. So please shoot me an email, natalia@artbynatalia.com. I'd love to talk to them. I'm actively looking for a sponsor for this podcast. Thank you. This podcast was created, produced, and edited by me, Natalia Korover. Theme music by R.C. Gaida. To find out more about me, go to artbynatalia.com. To find out about my community, go to repurposercollective.com. And to learn with me, check out all my offerings at ecoloop.art. Thank you for listening.